It might be time to panic as disaster mode is hit. Darrion Williams to NC State, Sarr to Duke. Where the heck does Kansas go from here?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. Not a super enlightening one today. And what the heck is Kansas going to do? Because Darrion Williams has committed to NC State. Sarr made it official with Duke. Who's even left? Who's even out there for Kansas to try to add a game changer and not waste the one season of Darryn Peterson? So thank you again, anywhere you listen to the podcast or on our YouTube page. We are brought to you by Monarch Money. This episode is brought to you by Monarch, where you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. So we're going to get into the Darrion Williams news, what it means for KU. We're going to get into what options are out there at this point in time for the Jayhawks, and then we'll finish up with a little bit of the latest news. I guess hopefully finish on a little bit of a positive there on this episode of the show. Let's start here, though. Darrion Williams made it official, announced on Thursday afternoon that he is going to be committing to NC State. Picked NC State over Kansas. It seemed like Ohio State might have been in the running, maybe a return to Texas Tech, but it feels like NC State and Kansas were kind of the two commonalities, the two consistents, and he ends up picking there. Add to it that earlier today, Sarr made it official and picked Duke. Not that that one was a surprise based on where things were going, but it's the official thing that matters there after KU couldn't get it to be official. And both of those happening on the same day is absolutely a gut punch for this offseason for Bill Self and for KU. And it really is unfortunate with Williams specifically. That's the big one we're going to focus on here. He would have fit absolutely perfect on this KU roster. Like, you look at having Flory Bidunga, this great shot blocking center on the inside. Okay, Darrion Williams isn't the biggest guy, so if you're playing him at the 4, well, Flory helps make up for that in a lot of ways, right? You look at it at the offensive end. Well, Flory isn't the, most progressed offensive player that there is out there in the world. Well, that works perfectly that Darrion Williams is in the front court with him because he is a very good offensive player. Oh, Darrion Williams is a very good passer. So it works well with playing him off of Darryn Peterson and Flory and yada, yada, yada. Kansas needs more shooting. Darrion Williams is a good shooter. You take out the NCAA tournament, he was shooting, mid 36% from 3. So you go down the list, he would have been a perfect fit for KU, and they need another wing at this point in time, so he would have slid right in there. And they need another, I guess whether you want to call it a star player or just impact player. They need another impact player because you have Darryn Peterson, you have Flory Bidunga, you have some good role players that you've recruited to fit, but you need that one more final big piece. And when Sarr picked Duke, when Williams picks NC State, you're running out of those options. There's still some options available if you just need a guy to come in for 5-10 minutes per game. There's some options available for backup players or for a role player. You don't really have those options left anymore. And again, we'll get to that in segment 2, who even is still out there in terms of being guys who can make a huge impact like Williams could have. So certainly that makes it so that this does feel a little bit of desperation time now at this point in time. If you are Kansas, it does make this feel like one of the most disastrous off seasons. And it's weird because I have enjoyed the fact that they've recruited to fit as opposed to just pure talent. But now it has left you in a spot where you need somebody for pure talent. And so it's almost like you've gone too much the other way. And so I can't remember another offseason that was like this, where there were this many questions, this many uncertainties in late May for Kansas roster. And for so long, we've had spring Bill. That Bill Self has come through with the big time commitment, whether it was a high school kid, whether it was, Andrew Wiggins, Josh Jackson, Sheck Diallo. Obviously that one didn't, pan out, but that he's gotten that big addition in spring, or if it was the transfer portal, right? I know the Hunter Dickinson era, Kansas didn't win as much as they wanted to, but that was a big deal when they got him. Spring Bill was so strong at closing the deal. And now it feels like, okay, it almost feels like you've lost a step over the past couple of years on the court, but was that based on this or that, right? And now it feels like you've lost an ability a little bit to close off the court. And, it's one thing to lose Sarr to Duke. It's another thing to lose a battle to NC State. And Will Wade we know he's a great recruiter and somebody who will come in with hard offers. Andrew Slater is their new GM and like a very smart, adept at the job. I think this just more adds to me the idea that KU should have added a GM and that didn't end up happening. And I don't know how much that's hurt or helped KU over this offseason. Like, I don't know how much it would have hurt or helped this specific recruitment, but would it have helped them with other recruitments or finding the right players or, getting ahead on certain stuff? Maybe. It certainly would have. And I don't know that, I don't know. It certainly didn't help, right? Or didn't, not whatever. Does this make it more likely that this will be Bill Self's final season, right? Continuing the idea, you deal with the Flory thing where he enters the portal, you have to win him back over. Missing out on recruits, the lack of success the last couple seasons, is it more likely he is now just going to be fed up with this and wants to go after this year of coaching Darryn Peterson? I don't know. I think that would be, it wouldn't shock me if that were the case, right? But it just it leaves me wondering, like, why and how did this happen? Because again, you're Kansas. You should not be losing this recruiting battle to NC State. And it would be one thing if the main reason was, okay, Darrion Williams wants to be the guy. And at Kansas, he's going to be the second option on offense. And, from a drafted perspective, he would be the third best player, right? If you think that Flory would be higher than him on like a mock draft, for instance, right? But I don't really get that sense from him. And to me, this almost feels like it would more so be either about he didn't feel the fit at Kansas, which that would be an indictment on yourself, or it was a money thing. And if it's a money thing, I just don't totally understand that from a standpoint of like, I don't know. Is there a certain limit that Kansas can or can't go to? Is Kansas being, held back because of the stadium funds and stuff like that? At the same point in time, I almost have a hard time believing, especially after they announced the Jacques Vaughn thing, yesterday, that almost feels intentional to me, of the idea that you would announce that to try to drum up more donor interest. I almost have a hard time believing that, with the lack of options that are out there, that if Bill Self doesn't call up his top donors, he's like, hey, we need $500,000 more or whatever it is to make this happen, to meet the offer from NC State, that they don't get it done. But maybe that is the case. Maybe that is where we're at. And if that is where we're at, that's not a good place for Kansas to be. Now, maybe it's a spot where once the football stadium is fully renovated, this won't be an issue for them. But it also feels like, to some extent, you had clearly raised, maybe it's not to what NC State offered, you had clearly raised a certain amount or been able to tap into a certain amount of funds to get him to at least get close to the finishing line there. And it almost feels like a wasted opportunity to be like, okay, they could have used that money on X player early in the portal that maybe they thought was asking for too much money at the time. But now that there are not many options, they're like, crap, I wish we would have paid that much for that player. Or better yet, to be able to be like, you know what? If we could have directed some of that money to football, maybe we could have landed an all Big 12 level transfer out of the transfer portal. And that's the thing with football. You could, if Darrion was, I have no idea how much he's going for. Let's say he's going for $4 million. $4 million in football could get you 4 all conference level players, possibly. Not quarterbacks, but at other positions. It's very possible, right? Or could that money have gone to, hey, we can double Dan Fitzgerald's salary and give him $1 million of NIL pool, KU baseball is rolling, or give a little more money to Matt Ulmer with the volleyball team? I don't know. Or you see Bill Self making $9-10 million a year, and you're like, okay, if they couldn't make the money, Bill, could you have just made $8 million this year to get that $1 million over the bump, right? I think those are all fair questions to ask right now because of how much this offseason has felt like you have struck out on some of your big targets. The worst part of this to me is that it feels like you're kind of wasting out on a year of golden opportunity by having Darryn Peterson. There's a chance you have the best player in the country in Darryn Peterson. At the very least, there's a chance that he's one of the best players in the country, that he's one of the 5 or 10 best players in the country. That's not that far-fetched. But again, he could be the best player in the country. And so to a certain point, if you have a better fitting roster and you do have one of the 5 best players in the country and Flory takes a big step forward and he's, one of the best defensive centers in the country, I still think Kansas is going to be a good team. They'll be a top 25 team, top 20 team. But when you have possibly the best player in the country, the expectation is be one of the 5 best teams in the country. You know what I mean? Be one of the top tier teams for winning a national title or winning a Final Four, and then see where the chips lie when you get to March. And it doesn't feel like Kansas is really even close to that group at this point in time, which does feel like you're kind of wasting a real opportunity. In the same way that if the Chiefs ever have a bad team with Patrick Mahomes, it's going to feel like they wasted a year with Patrick Mahomes. But with Darryn Peterson, you only get 1 year. with all of this. And meanwhile, the summer school semester starts in a week. You don't really know what you're doing. So who are some possible options that KU could even look to? Because things are getting a little bit dire out there. Let's discuss that next. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did my money go? Maybe KU is feeling that way right now. I don't know. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing all your money and start building wealth. It has all-in-one convenience where instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Darrion Williams to NC State. Who is even available? What are the options out there at this point in time that Kansas can even turn to? Well, from the college game, there's really two big wings out there. R.J. Lewis, but seems like he's leaning towards staying in the draft. It also seems like KU isn't really that interested in R.J. Lewis. Jameer Watkins is the other one. He might also be staying in the draft. Also feels like there hasn't been any connection there for Kansas. I don't know if there's something there that we just don't know about either of those guys. Could there be an off-the-court thing with either guy that is keeping Kansas from? Possibly. I don't know, but it feels like there's not a connection there. So then you run into okay, do you go for, I don't know, a PJ Haggerty? It seems like he might be leaning toward K-State at this point, and it does make you wonder, okay, did NC State figure out they're going to lose PJ Haggerty to Kansas State to where they were like, okay, well, we're going to try to get Haggerty and Williams. Now that we know we're not getting Haggerty, we're just going to go, we have an extra sum of money we were going to give to Haggerty that we can just give to Williams, and then Kansas can't outbid us. That's a possibility. I don't know, but if Haggerty is still available and out there, doesn't even make sense. His camp came out and said they wanted a huge sum of money and wanted him to be the primary point guard. That doesn't really work with Darryn Peterson, but is there some way you can massage that over and make it work and just get the most talented player available in the portal, even if it might not be a fit? But then does that just bring us to where we were last year, where, you're recruiting talent over fit? So that's not a great option. There's just not many college options that are even left, which kind of leads you, at least for this spot, right? If we're talking the backup spots, if we're talking the role player spots, there are players available, though those are running out too. But the international route kind of becomes the most obvious one, and the one where it's they're going to have to go over if you're Kansas. So I think my favorites right now, if you're talking wings, I've mentioned I really like Henshaw, but again, he's more of a guard, so maybe they want more of a wing, which makes sense. They need more of a wing. It's Neoklis Abdalis. He's the Greek player who's a young Greek player who's named the 2024 Greek Young Player of the Year in his league. Could possibly be staying in the NBA draft. We have to wait and see, but kind of a 6'9", do-it-all who can play the 3 or the 4, very skilled player. Would love to add him. Or Marko Radunovic, who was a recent guy we mentioned who's a 6'6" wing. I think he's originally born in Montenegro and has really good production at his level of play, to where he might even be my favorite of the ones available. But you can make a real argument between Radunovic and Abdalis. If you can land either one of those two, it's much more of an unknown than what Darrion Williams was going to bring to the table. And so I would have rather Darrion Williams was my number one target, right? I'm not going to, act like that wasn't the case. But if you can land one of those guys, there's a chance that they give you that level of production, right? If you just look at NBA mock drafts and big boards, kind of similar in terms of their value to where Williams is there. Now, that's a different question from what are they going to do in college, especially in having to adjust to America and the Division I game and the differences in rules from international. That maybe is a little bit more of an adjustment, but there is a chance that can happen, but you got to be able to find those. There's also a new name to watch, according to Tobias Bass of The Athletic. This came earlier today. He said, one of the top prospects in Europe, 20-year-old Serbian guard, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ognjen, Ognen, I don't know, Stankovic, great last name, camping groups will have fun with that one if he comes to KU and Lawrence. But he has signed with an agency, Weave, in America, and is ready to explore college options. And that says the 6'8" guard has heard from Rutgers, New Mexico State, UCF, USF, Southern Miss, Seton Hall, St. Mary's, Kansas, UIC, Pacific, Duquesne, Missouri, and Ohio State. So not a ton on him, but 12 minutes per game in the Bosnian top league, in the ABA as well, which is kind of like the Baltic League. 3.1 points per game, 1.2 rebounds per game, 1 assist per game, 0.9 steals per game, so good steal numbers. 60% shooting, that's good. 3-point percentage looks good, but it's very low volume. 8 of 17 from 3. For his career, to give us a little more idea of the shooting splits, he's played 49 games in the ABA between his age 17, 18, and 19 seasons. And career 52% from the field, so that's very good. 29% from 3, so not as good there. But again, he was better at it this year, and he is a young player, so you're going to get better at it. Only 55% at the foul line, which tells you maybe the three-point shooting is a bit of a mirage, going 8 for 17 there. But this feels like kind of based on like the stats, maybe the lack of like, you compare him to some of the other international players we talked about, like the stats aren't quite there. And when you look at like the list of schools that are being mentioned there, right? I mean, you have like Illinois, Chicago on there. You have Duquesne on there. There are some other power schools, right? UCF, Ohio State, Missouri. But it does make you wonder if he goes to a school like Kansas or Ohio State or Missouri, is he more of a like backup fringe role player? Whereas if he goes to like a UIC, he's a starter. And in that case, he's not, he'd be a player I'd be interested in for, you know, maybe that specific role, being a backup, right? Kansas could still use a couple backups at this point in time. Maybe you develop him into something. But if we're talking about finding a replacement for losing Darrion Williams, that doesn't fit that billing, right? You do kind of fall into needing an Avdalis or a Radunovic or somebody else out there that, you know, I mean, we mentioned Declan Duru, although he might be more, you know, long-term potential too. They're Henshaw, right? There are guys that are out there, and there's guys that I haven't even heard about or that we haven't even seen yet, or that maybe are out there that we don't even know about yet. At least with international, you have the whole world, right? It could be anybody, anywhere. But yeah, it does feel like things are a little bit scarce there. There is another question of like, what if you just, do you just now say that, okay, we're just going to roll with the starting lineup of, you know, at this point, I guess, Darryn Peterson, 2 of the 3 guards of Elmarco Jackson, Melvin Council, Jaden Dawson. So 2 of those 3 would start. Trey White at the 4, and then Flory at the 5. And you just say, hey, instead of investing and trying to get like a starter level wing, let's just invest more in a backup big man. So instead of getting a, you know, Pat Swemnick or somebody who's a backup big who you just want to not, you know, crash the car, so to speak, when they're in there for 5-10 minutes game, do you try to get somebody who like is a good player and you overpay them so that they're content in a smaller role than maybe they could get elsewhere? Here's the problem with that. I was looking at 24/7's portal rankings, and it's not the be-all, end-all, right? I mean, there are a lot of players who end up being underranked on there, overranked on there. It's an inexact science, but there's only one center on the 24/7 portal rankings that has an 85 transfer grade or better. It's Bradley Izawiro, who I think even needs a waiver after he played 7 games at his first year at LSU. But like even him, like he's a solid player, but I don't know that he's a game changer necessarily. So the other option would be doing that same idea, but investing in more of a power forward center type who you could say, okay, they're going to start at the 4, or they'll come off the bench as a 4, but they can also give us minutes as a backup 5 and getting somebody better there. The only power forward on 24/7 Sports in the portal with a 90 transfer grade or better, Van Allen Lubin and Prince Aligbe. And you look at like Prince Aligbe, for instance, I think coming over from Seton Hall. Yeah, he was at Seton Hall. He's a 6'7", 230-pound forward, was a junior, 7.8 points, 3.6 rebounds per game at Seton Hall. Like, is that a game changer? No, it's not. If you look at Van Allen Lubin, he was at North Carolina, 8.7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Do you go that way? But he doesn't shoot threes, so he's 0% from 3 this year. You can't really play him next to Flory Bidunga then. So you just don't really have the option. So I guess the bottom line here, you're going to have to go international. Get your passport ready, Bill. That's kind of the answer here. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is not good is the bottom line for Kansas. All right, latest news. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Wish it was more happy content here on the show. And thanks for joining us anywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget, you can check out Locked On College Basketball, Locked On College Football for your second listen every day. I'm sure Locked On College Basketball is going to have a lot to say about this, both in terms of NC State and in terms of Kansas. So latest news, KU baseball right now is playing in the Big 12 tournament. As I'm speaking, they're down 3-2 in the fourth inning, but by the time you listen to this, you'll probably know the results of what happens in the game. But I saw somebody who works on a college baseball publication was saying if Kansas can win the Big 12 tournament, they could actually host in the first round, top 16 host in the NCAA tournament. That's announced Sunday. The NCAA tournament full field is announced Monday, but right now trailing early on in that one. So we'll see what happens for the Jayhawks. But either way, it's been a great season to this point in time for Dan Fitzgerald and company. And yeah, man, if they're not going to spend all that money on basketball, it could be a contingent thing where it's like the donor will spend the money if you get this player. But if they don't, they're just not going to spend the money. But if you do have the money, if the money is in the banana stand already, make sure Dan Fitzgerald's happy because they're 42-14. They nearly won the Big 12, if not for kind of a technicality with scheduling. Some other news. This comes from Dushan London, who does a lot of recruiting stuff with 24/7 Sports. He posted Ashlyn Koopel, who is the number 9 overall prospect in the class of 2026, has shifted her focus to 5 schools. She's going to take an official visit to Michigan State, who's on there with TCU, Nebraska, Duke, and Kansas. Hey, maybe put the money there. Let's just be a women's basketball powerhouse, too. And then this one comes from the world of college football. Brett McMurphy posted earlier today, the college football playoff is going to be changing to straight seeding. So instead of the top 4 seeds they have to be conference winners, now it's just the top 4 seeds get first round buys regardless if it won a conference title or not. The conference champs still get an auto bid, but it is seeded based on ranking. So it could one day have an effect on Kansas, for instance. Like Arizona State ended up being the 4 seed, got a bye to get ready for Texas, and almost beat them. Instead, Arizona State would be the 11 seed if you redid last year's college football playoff. If Kansas gets to a point where they can win the Big 12 in the previous structure, they probably would have got a top 4 seed in a bye. Now they would probably not get that, right? I mean, I guess it depends how good the year was, but And then the last piece of news, and boy, does Kansas need some good news, so hopefully this goes their way, but Corey Amakri is a 4-star running back from the state of Michigan. He is announcing on Friday where he is going to go to school. That was announced earlier this week. I just don't think I've mentioned it on the show yet. So if he does pick KU, we'll have a little show on it and hopefully can have a little bit of a party because, yeah, we need some good news here with Kansas and in Lawrence for something happening. So keep an eye out for that one. I think he's committing at 3 Eastern time, so 2 o'clock Central time. And, yeah, I guess, continue. Where are we putting the money? Spread it out. Give a little football, give a little women's basketball, give a little volleyball. Obviously, they still need the money to bring on more basketball players, so that'll be the case. But if you do, let's say Darrion Williams, like I said, I don't know, did he go for $3 million? Did he go for $4 million? Whatever it is. Let's say he goes for $4 million. Let's say a good European player goes for $2 million. If you have $2 extra million lying around, okay, divvy it out over the other sports because this has not been pretty right now for the KU basketball offseason so far. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. We will see you next time for any other breaking news, hopefully some positive news coming soon here on Locked On Jayhawks. And if not, we'll be back on Monday to talk more KU basketball offseason and anything else that goes on during the weekend. See you then with LOJ.